Hi, and welcome to everybody. We are a little bit late, perhaps due to our early start time. Not everybody is here yet, so please bear with us. We'll get this started shortly. Thank you.
Sorry to be late. I'm figuring out the problem. Is everything in order to start?
Yes, we just don't have a quorum.
Oh, what is our time? We're 37. I think we should start anyway. The first one is pretty much pro forma. Okay.
Yeah, let's go ahead then.
This is Community Board 2 Manhattan, the landmarks meeting for February of 2025. I believe that most of the presenters have been with us before. Those of you who haven't, the first few have. So if you would just look along and see what the procedure is, we won't take time to read it. Susan, would you read the first one and then I'll be back?
Sure. The first one, our first application is 465 6th Avenue. Application is to install exterior lighting fixtures. I will elevate Paola Paulino.
Oh, this is the pizza place.
Yeah.
This is an application that we've heard earlier, and all the parts have been dealt with except for the lighting. So a decision on the lighting will be added to the resolution that was made from the first meeting with that part corrected. Thank you. You can begin now, please.
The applicant here. There she is.
Paola, you can go ahead and begin when you're ready. Thank you.
Yeah. And if there are any changes apart from the lighting from the first presentation, please call those to our attention.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so here's the lighting fixture that we're proposing, a new LED cove lighting that is gonna illuminate just the sign. And it's gonna be concealed, this is new, under a new cornice. This cornice is replicating the one that they had in the past for the store. Sally is inspired on this. So we're using that as an inspiration and putting the cove lighting under, and also concealing the cables are there at the moment. And this used to be raised peaks that used to be in that location. And this is how it looks now, like we know, like I showed you before. And the specs for the lighting will be this one. This is a spec for the lighting. It's a narrow crown with 3000 K. That's the intensity of the light. So that's going to be concealed under the cornice.
Oh, to ask some questions.
Okay,
Yes.
that's it, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anita, I know you have some questions.
Oh, yes. Hi there. Thanks for coming back. This is a better choice than the last time, but I have to say, there's no historic precedence. What's the word? President. So it's not historic at all. And my advice would be, again, to just omit the lighting. There's plenty of lighting on this little shop, and the cove lighting is just another vocabulary from another era. They weren't cove lighting back in the day. So I would just say eliminate it. That's my suggestion to you.
It doesn't make a difference that we're going to hide it under a cornice that was from the past.
Not to me, because cove lighting is a type of lighting. It's very modern, came really big in the 80s. So I just don't think you need it. That's really the bottom line also. It's a very bright corner. You've got a million fluorescent lights inside. It's gonna be visible from blocks away.
Okay.
But let's hear what other people say. That's my.
I'd like to ask if you have any examples from the district with this sort of lighting.
Yes. Let me just have a quick look.
Okay, if you can show those, that would be useful.
I-
And something that was approved by the commission, which means in effect that it was done in the last years. Recently.
I have a question, Paolo. We had asked the last time that you confer with the folks at Landmarks to see what they might recommend.
I did.
for you.
Yeah, that's what they recommend. To be honest, I spoke to them twice.
And this cove lighting is what they recommended.
Yeah, they even showed me this as an example.
Okay, did they recommend any other possibilities, or is this the only thing they recommended?
Yeah, this possibility. I even said if I could have other options to show you, because I remember in the past you guys asked if I had others, and they say that this should do it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions from the public? I don't see any hands raised. No hands are raised. So we will say thank you to you, and we will talk about this in our business session later.
Okay,
Thank you, Paola.
thank you.
Thank you.
The next application is for 535 Broadway to replace existing non-historic storefront, add signage, and uncover existing cast iron piers. There has been a late revision to this, so if you would point out what the revisions are in the between the next to the last and the last version that you sent, that would be helpful to us.
Good evening. I'm Mary Dirks. I'm going to ask you to promote David Kloman, David Hay, and Stephanie. Are you in there too?
I have promoted them both.
Oh, thank you very much.
Sure.
Looking for my camera.
Bottom left. I'm Mary Dirks, the preservation consultant for the project, and presenting with me is David Kloman from Tricerico Architecture and Design. Stephanie Brunner is here. She'll be sharing the presentation PDF and just dealing with the presentation. This is an application for a new storefront at 535 Broadway, as mentioned. Next, this is Soho. This building was built in 1852 as a commercial building with stores, and the builder was George Sutton. The existing storefront, as mentioned, is not historic, and it's the last of several storefronts over the period, which was a long period, 150 years. Next. There is at least one existing cast iron pier at the south side, and you can see it here. Oh no, you can. If Stephanie, if you would point to the pier. Yeah, we're not sure about the one on the north side. If it's there, we're going to expose it, and if it isn't, we're going to leave it plain. But we are exposing the one that we know about. There are no other original or early features. Next. Here it is in 1899 and in 1910. Next. And here it is before 1919, in 1940, and that's a different storefront in 1940. And at designation, you just get sort of a slice of it, but it's there. And their earlier storefronts with high bulkheads and transom. Next. These are examples of storefronts in the district that have low bulkheads and modern metal infill. 597 Broadway at the bottom, we weren't entirely sure whether the sign was built as approved, so we photoshopped it out. But in case you recognize the building. Next. David Kloman will take you through the new design.
Thank you, Mary, for the intro and the tour. And good evening, committee members, and thank you for your time tonight. We offer a simple and straightforward design solution in terms of proportion, materials, finish, and preservation. As Mary mentioned, we seek to uncover the existing cast iron piers. One we can see somewhat on the left on the side, and one we will look for in a probe on the right. In terms of the design itself, next page. We are proposing to, of course, retain the doors on the right, which are existing and serve the upper level residences. Previous to this design, the store was entered through this pair of doors on the right through a very small foyer, and then this sort of odd angled overhead door within. We're proposing new entry doors at the street, as is traditional in retail. The doors are the same height as the adjacent doors, all glass. There's a film on the glass above in the transom, follows the same horizontal line as the transom adjacent to it existing. The glass is filmed to hide an air curtain within. Immediate to the left of the doors is a large window, which is meant to offer exposure within the store and to a graphic panel inside. The finishes are painted to be, you'll see the paint, Nippon paint. It's a pearl, sort of a light beige color, harkens back to concrete and limestone. We will also paint the cast iron in that finish as well. You'll notice immediately within the doors a sliding grille for security. And then beyond that is a ramp, a new ramp to the left, which will serve to allow ADA access to the raised floor inside. It's about an 8-inch riser, well within. Next slide.
David, the cornice above reflects this building has a cornice on every floor, and the cornice reflects that, and then there's a cove light underneath. And I do want to say that cove lights actually can be approved at staff level at Landmarks. They like them very much. Talking about previous conversations.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Mary, for that reminder. So yes, the cove is related to coves, the cornice in profile and extent, full width of the storefront. It does conceal a cove light, which is not a new concept in this store front. It has existed before and is actually there now, but not operating. Let's go to the next slide. Sections through on the left section through the full glass, and then in the middle is going a step down soffit within the space about 3 feet in to contain the rolling grill structure. The section to the right with the door handles and the door in context with the air curtain. And then finally, at the far right are the details of the sign band, fascia, and the crown molding and concealed cove light. Let's see the next slide. This is the proposed rendering of the design solution. You'll see the graphic on the left, which we wish to display through the larger window, and then the frosted film glass in the transom, and the illumination of the cove. And let's see the last slide. And here we have side by side of what exists now on the left and what we propose on the right.
The change, Chanel, is we worked with staff who wanted configurations that were a little more in keeping with the historic district. So we had more glass and bigger hunks of it, and had not we're not planning to expose the cast iron column, and that's all changed now to be a little bit more in keeping with the historic district.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's it. That's where we're at.
Could you show us the examples you showed us earlier of adjacent neighborhood properties, please?
There you go.
Chenault, you're muted.
I'm sorry. The current entranceway, is that historic or a reproduction of historic?
On the far right?
Yeah,
Chanel?
that's restoring.
Existing. Those are existing doors.
Right.
And
are you undertaking to restore that as
no.
well? No.
No, the storefront, the various storefronts had very different configurations. I think that they were probably originally 4 openings divided by cast iron columns, and that just is completely gone. And then there was one that was a projecting storefront that you can't have anymore. So it's been like a lot of different configurations. Right. David will mention that the reason the doors are where they are is for easier wheelchair access.
We understood that, yeah. And
Yeah.
I could say that we so much appreciate being able to solve that inside rather than anything on the sidewalk is somewhat of an intrusion. So
yeah, and we did want to separate the residents from the retail customers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at the room, whoever.
Okay, I think Anita was asking something. Were you done?
No, I don't understand where the ramp is. Where is the ramp on this drawing?
It's on the far left. The original ramp runs left to right and very close to the inside of the storefront. Does not afford ADA clearance in that position. So it's been changed to run front to back and further into the space. So unfortunately, it's cut off in this plan, but it starts.
What's the level change? 1 or 2 steps?
It's one riser.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about this graphic panel. Can you talk to us about that? Is that something that's, how big is it? What is it? Is it a static image? Is it a moving image? Is it an LED screen? Talk to us, please.
Well, I believe it's a Duratrans, which is a fixed image on a light box.
David, please tell them how far it's set back.
Oh, it's 2. I can't see the dimension, but it's a little short of 3 feet. So it's pretty well within the space, and it aligns with the grill.
2 feet 5 inches.
It's 2 feet of it.
2 feet 5. Okay. Yeah, we show that in the section. So it's a fixed image. Duratrans, if you're familiar with those.
I'm not.
They're printed image on a translucent panel.
Okay, so it doesn't have the capability of becoming a moving image then ever. It is just what it is.
Well, for now it's fixed. That's all I know about it.
So we don't really know. Okay,
Well, that's what we're proposing.
Right.
right. Right.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, visual people a year from now, who knows what they would want to do. But it's
Yeah.
it's
That's
representative.
our concern.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a fixed image.
And you're representing that its size and distance from the sidewalk and all that conforms to regulations.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Brian, do you have any questions?
No, looks like a good solution to me.
All right, Chanel, do you have any questions?
Oh, no more.
Okay, I thought I saw Pete's hand up. Let me. Yeah, okay, Pete, I'm going to find you. You see his name there? There you are, okay. Okay, Pete.
Great. Thank you very much. Pete Davies, Broadway Residents Coalition. I live on this block, have for 45 years. I'm curious, is the storefront that is there now, was that an approved change or is that something that was just put in at some point?
You know, I think it was approved. There was no violation and it's been there for quite a while, but it is not, it's not what was there at designation. It was put in at a later time, but there was no violation on it and Landmark staff didn't mention, you know, anything about it.
Okay. Is the oldest building on the block? 1835, I believe.
Wow.
1852, according to the designation report.
1835. And if you could put back up the comparison of what's there now and what's proposed.
Sure. That's the last slide. Thank you.
You know, yeah, we now have a large expanse of glass. What's proposed is really a jumble of disconnected shapes and sizes and this, that, and the other. If the committee remembers recently, Aritzia just up the block came to you with a proposal for a very large wall of illuminated signage inside the building, which was rejected by the committee as overly large and overwhelming and inappropriate. And without context, the commission has also recently, just down the block across the street, taken great issue with screens that are taking over the window in such a way that the windows simply become a frame for an advertisement. And you'll see this next door at Nike. They have taken over an entire panel with a illuminated moving LED screen at just to the left of that where that unfashionable shop was. Anyway, I just think this is not the answer. It's inappropriate. It's you know, if we were in a mall in New Jersey, it would probably be okay. But here in Soho, this doesn't meet the mark.
If I can say the graphic wall is meets the staff level requirements. It's past 18 inches back, and it allows the store to retain its openness according, you know, to Landmark's rules. So I understand you don't like big graphics, but you know,
the other applicants nearby, where the commissioners said, whoa, 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 So perhaps staff isn't as attentive to the details of this
And we
historic.
need to wrap this testimony up, please, the time.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Thanks, Mary. Anita, you have another question?
Yeah, no, I was gonna make a suggestion. I think, I think the elevation, the storefront, let me just take the
Yeah, I'm
picture back,
trying to do
when you can.
A
I
little
think
closer
that-
to the mic, please, Anita.
Oh, sorry. I think the elevation would be helped if the transom went across the adjacent storefront. Because right now it looks like 3 different personalities. So if the transom, I think, would help. It's not a big enough storefront to introduce yet another type of bay, one without the transom. So that's my comment.
Thank you. There was a reason for it, David. It was to be able to see more into the store and
Oh, I get
and have the
it. All
graphic.
we
Yeah,
ask.
yeah.
We know all that.
Yeah, but yes. We
I mean,
understand that.
nobody's gonna not look in because of a transom unless they're giants or on a bus, you know.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Anita took my comments.
That's so her. Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
No, we're good.
All right, well, thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Very
David,
much.
Mary.
Appreciated, your time and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And we
ready?
will find our next.
The next application is 75 McDougal Street.
74.
74. Oops.
But if
To
you
construct a rooftop addition,
Yeah.
add mechanical equipment, guardrails,
Up here.
extensions to the roof.
So she's talking to the mic.
that'll help with the
And
mic.
there is a note that the staff was approving what we believe is not a staff something to approve in the back. So we will, it's in the presentation materials, and we will look at it and make our comments. And if indeed it's a staff authorized approval, they can take those into account. Thank you.
Okay, with your permission, I'm going to share my screen. And let's just make sure it loads up. What? Have you been promoted? Yeah, they promoted me. Okay, great. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm the president.
Don't say that. Oh, that's really not good.
Hi, my name is Mark Birak. I'm a principal at DTLS Architecture, and thank you for taking the time to have us present. I'm here with the owners of the project, Brian and
Hi.
Sebastian, and also the project manager, Alicia. And they're members of the community, and they're looking to make this their forever home. For those of you who need a little bit of context, the building is located at 74 McDougal. It's part of the McDougal-Sullivan Gardens Historic District. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a 1-block historic district that's between Sullivan and McDougal. But what's also unique about this is that it's the furthest southernmost house in the historic district on McDougal. So you have frontage along McDougal, but then you also have a unique common yard in the back in which all the brownstones share. So we're going to kind of walk you through the process and explain what our plans are for the building. If you look here, you can see the actual boundary for the district, and you'll see how the hatch shows where our building is. Keep that in mind when we're going through some of these pictures. There we go. So moving from left to right, there's a little lag here. I'm sorry about that. There we go. Moving from left to right, it's important to note what you can see when you're in the historic district versus what you see when you're outside looking in. On the far left, you're in the northern part of McDougal Street. So you really don't see any of the intervention on the roof based on the height of the parapet and the corbelling. Even directly in front of the building, which is the southernmost point of the historic district, you don't really see anything from the roof. It's only when you travel further south towards Houston that you can start to see some of the intervention that's currently happening on the top. We want you to keep that in mind as we're working through our proposal for the rooftop bulkhead and adjustments to the parapet, because we went to great lengths working with landmarks to make sure that anything that was within the historic district would not be visible, and that it was only going to be visible when you were outside looking in. It's also interesting to see the house from the back. Since there is a common yard, there's been a lot of eclectic mixes to the way that other neighbors have approached their rear facade. That includes adding bulkheads, changing the parapet height, adding rear fencing, adding Juliet balconies, and larger glass openings. So we want to just encourage the kind of unique fabric of this garden, since it is a common yard, and note that there's already been a lot of mixes to how people have approached the rear facade. Since our intervention is primarily happening on the roof, we wanted to show you how the view looks to the west and to the south, but even more importantly, is to show you that when you are standing on the roof, you do not see any of the adjacent streets. And that same thing can be said in reverse. When you're standing on McDougal, when you're standing on Sullivan, you don't see anything that's happening on the roof. The existing front facade is picking up on the language of McDougal Street. It's a 4-story building with a front parapet and corbelling. The rear has a slightly lower parapet, and that's due to the slope of the roof, but it is still punctuated by the same 4 floors and stone lintels over the openings. There is an existing rear awning, which we will be removing. Since this part of the facade is visible from Houston Street, you can see how the existing parapet steps down towards the rear. There's a diagonal line that shows the existing roof angles. So we'll be kind of picking up on that within our design. Historically, McDougal is an eclectic mix. While originally these houses had front stoops and all were with their natural brick, over time they've been painted in unique ways to create a tapestry where each front facade is a little bit different. Even as far back as 2009, the front brick was painted a different color than what you can see today. The primary intervention that the landmarks commissioners are interested in is our rooftop bulkhead. It's going to accomplish 3 things. It's a destination for the stairs, it's a solarium, and it also gives you direct access to the front and rear terraces. We also work with our landmarks reps to make sure that the fire department access was shifted to the north side of the building. We did that to minimize any visibility should a guardrail be required. And in doing so, we managed to make sure that nothing would be visible from Houston Street. When looking at the sight lines, this is a really key diagram. When you're standing to the furthest west you can within the historic district, you are right across McDougal Street against the fence that has the playground behind it. If this sight line, you do not see any of the proposed mechanical equipment nor the bulkhead on the roof. Again, when you're within the historic district, you don't see any of the proposed interventions. You'd have to go 300 feet to the west when you're standing on 6th Avenue, in which your sight lines change, and then you can see the very top of the proposed AC units and also the top of the bulkhead. That said, this is outside of the historic district, so you're on the outside looking in. We prepared a full-size mock-up. This mock-up highlights the proposed bulkhead as well as the parapet, mechanical, and handrail changes. In these first 2 views, you're looking at the proposed bulkhead towards the south, but you can also see the parapet line. Moving further along, you can see the rear guardrail, which we pulled 1 foot back from the rear facade, and the mechanical system, which is going to be going along the north side of the building. It's important to document that when we were taking photos of this mock-up from the street, nothing was visible from within the historic district. It was only once you stepped outside that you were able to see some of the real bulkhead and the parapet from Houston Street. Along the—
Sir, is this the end? Have you finished about the visibility?
What was that?
I just want to ask a question before you move on.
Of course.
It is also not visible from the adjacent extension.
Oh, actually, we can show you the Sullivan Street side.
I just want to be sure that that's part of the representation.
Of course, we'll get to that slide. It's 2 away.
Okay. Fine, if you have it later.
But it's good that you asked, because it's always good to double check. So You can see the proposed rear guardrail and the bulkhead when you're standing in the common yard. But as you'll see in our future slides, there's already been a lot of interventions like this along the common yard. So we just want to pick up on the character that they've already been presenting. And to answer your question, Chanel, since the historic district does travel over to Sullivan, we walked up and down the street. There is an opening when you get closer to Houston Street, but even through that opening, you don't see any of the proposed intervention.
Okay. And nothing from the west, obviously.
What about the South Village extension?
You're talking about the portion south of Houston Street. We did document that, and you get the same sort of visuals that you're getting when you were over on 6th Avenue. So the southern exposure does show the bulkhead. So you'd have to be standing within a historical district, looking out over a non-historical district, back into a historical district to see it.
Do you think you're a lawyer, aren't you? I think so.
Do you have a photograph of the mock-up from that South Village
We don't have it in this
extension?
presentation, but we do have it, which we can share with
Yeah, it would be
you.
good to see that so that we could see just how visible.
You know,
It
I might
is.
be able to access it from our
Yeah,
too.
great.
So
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to have me dig through the server right now,
No,
but
finish your
before I leave tonight, I'll
presentation,
show
but we
you.
would like to see it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we
As
documented.
we're kind of talking about the visibility, in your presentation, you're showing a bulkhead above the parapet, existing parapet on the side,
Yes.
but it's not there today. And I was wondering what happened to it.
Well, there's asbestos on the roof. So when we prepared the mock-up, we had to use temporary sandbags and anchors to hold it on since we couldn't put any penetrations into the roof itself. So our mock-up proposal was always going to be temporary. That said, we've kept all the components. So if you need us to set it back up again, we can easily coordinate with you. I also want to reiterate that Landmarks has also requested that we put it back up as necessary. So we haven't thrown anything out. It's just that we legally couldn't put any holes in the roof until the asbestos is remediated. It was a cart before the horse sort of thing. You know, picking up on some of the discussion that we've already had, it's important to say how not only the conversations that we're having today, but the conversation we were having with Landmarks has influenced how the design of the bulkhead came together. It's not visible from within the historic district, but it is visible from the outside looking in. So we made a conscious effort to be taking into account all the visual cues of the neighborhood, meaning that we were going to go with a brick cladding. We were going to go with stone lintels on top of the windows in the proposed door, and also match the mullion sizing so that it would look more indigenous to the neighborhood and not like it was some sort of foreign intervention that was plopped on top of a historic building. You can see that in the front facade, in which we'd also be matching all the characters of the lower portion of the building. On the south facade, which is the most visible when you're not in the historic district, we felt that it was a very massive wall. So we added 4 windows and a stone lintel, and we also leveled out the parapet. In doing so, we were hoping to make it look more like it was part of the original building in the same way that you see pop-outs in the rest of Soho and other neighborhoods. When you look to the rear of the building, you can see that by moving the ladder and the fire department access to the north side of the street, we were able to create a better balance and have a window on the southern portion of this facade. Since there's already bulkheads along the common area, we just thought we'd highlight how the eclectic mix adds and takes away from the actual area. One thing that you'll see is very few of them took strides to try to match the existing building. And then when we dive deeper into each one, you can see that in some cases, they were just more modern greenhouses. In other situations, they went for more of a stucco facade. And even most recently along Sullivan, this bulkhead was approved, which is not brick, nor does it have any of the existing geometry. What is unique about ours is that rather than getting a staff level approval, since all of these are not visible from the street, ours is viewable when you're south of the historic district. So that's why we've gone to much greater lengths to try to match the existing building. If you do a zoom in on the bulkhead, you just get an idea for how seamlessly we expect that this can stitch in with the rest of the building. and also how adding these windows on the south facade helps reduce the massing and the visual impact of the proposed addition. We aren't the only building that has proposed extending the parapet. There's 3 instances here where the parapet's been raised due to various reasons. The one thing to note is that we'll be making sure that the brick and the brick coating matches the original, and also it'll create a cleaner piece of geometry. The rest of this portion of the presentation is still going to be included in our landmarks set, but these will get staff level approvals. As you move through the common yard, you can see that people have taken some liberties to adding Juliet balconies, decks, and larger rear openings. We are proposing a similar intervention on the parlor level. It starts with a bifold door that'll open to a proposed deck and a staircase that goes down to the rear yard. We matched the existing stone lintel, and then we added mullions and spacing and sizing of the bifold door so that it would look more integrated into the building. We're proposing Marvin Ultimate, which has a wood exterior, so it can be painted to match the original wood. And that same idea picks up with the window replacements. We'll be doing direct replacements of the original windows on both facades. We'll be using Marvin Ultimate, which has an exterior wood, matching the mullion sizing and spacing since everything can be customized. The last thing is the proposed deck. We've noticed that lately when we're proposing to landmarks, they do prefer a simpler railing. So we're proposing a square iron railing. And I think the overall intention for the landmarks commissioners is that having a simple railing will minimize the impact on the rear facade. We're really excited to discuss what we're proposing with you and get your feedback. And we also want to give a hearty thank you for taking the time to listen to us. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. You're welcome. Anita, did you have something?
No.
Not yet. Brian?
Nothing comes up.
The only thing that comes up for me, we've already spoken about, I would like to see if you have a photograph from the South Village extension so that we can really see what the visibility might be.
And I think we have them, and I just have to apologize that you're going to have to dig through the tidal wave.
No worries.
Got them now?
Oh, you have them
You'll
right
find
now?
it.
Oh, great. Okay, if you want to pass them, and I'll look them up here.
Show it to.
Okay, we'll just pass it around.
Yeah, sure. You can feel free to just swipe on over and there's.
Or email it to him.
Well, I've got them here. I'm just going to pull them up on the
Okay,
icon.
that would be great. Then the public can see them as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so at risk of,
Brian, did you have any questions?
oh, that's
It's a very special place that you're moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very unique and
It's pretty
special.
swell, yeah.
A great legacy, great artists have lived there. Bob Dylan, I think, even lived there for a while, so you're groovy. It's great.
this is where.
No pressure.
So what you're looking at here is you're south of Houston Street. And basically, we go back, you can kind of trace this. This is walking south on McDougal. Now we're on the southern portion of Houston Street,
Right.
and we're going to start walking west. And you can see the mock-up here, and you can also see that south facade of the building. And then moving further west, you can start to see, this is a good example here, of how that southern wall is going to have a certain amount of mass, which is why working with landmarks, we proposed adding the 4 windows. Now we're standing on the west side of 6th Ave, and we'll start moving north. Here, looking through the playground, you can see the intervention. And we can also just send you guys these for formal documentation. And if you want, I can also zoom in a little bit.
If you could zoom in a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, yeah, so it's pretty visible, yeah.
It's the same kind of way that we showed you in those 2 sightline diagrams. When you are within the district, you can't see over the existing parapet. But when you start to go 300 feet to the west, or when you're going southwest, it's more visible. And there's just not enough other buildings to hide it. Whereas some of the bulkheads that are further north on McDougal, you start getting blocked by the west buildings.
Right.
And then if you want, we might have a couple others. Oops. I think that when we were working with Brian and Sebastian, one of the first things we discussed with them was the discussion we're having right now. You won't see it when you're within the district, but what constitutes a historic district? Is it only when you're standing inside?
Right,
Or is it
exactly.
when somebody's outside looking in?
Right.
So when we were going through the design iterations of the rooftop, we really wanted to make something that was respectful for the neighborhood, especially something that wasn't jarring when people are looking in.
Right. No, it's obvious that you've designed something that is organic with the building and not, a spaceship landing on the roof.
Well, if you want a spaceship.
No. Okay,
No,
thank
and
you.
so we
Brian.
might as
This
well-
was interesting from the landmarks staff point of view because they have drilled into us and to everyone who would listen the importance of rooftop additions, saying that they're rooftop additions. And here, for very good reason, it seems that another tact has been taken, which is very interesting. It certainly is the exception.
We took some time to look at all the bulkheads, not just within our historic district. And it seems like in some cases, they took a lot of creative liberties, just buying kits and things like that. But we felt like we had a certain responsibility due to the high visibility of our building to do something that was respectful.
And the staff were receptive to this or encouraged it even.
Without a doubt. And their feedback was to try to make it folded in as much as possible. They were amongst the people that recommended we add more windows on the south facade and also just to make sure that the parapet was clean.
Are there any questions about the
It
rooftop?
looked like Brian had something here.
Well, since it's been repeated so many times that it's only visible outside the historic district, I'm sure you know that that has nothing to do with how we approach any additions to a historic building. Any public right-of-way is the language that's used. So, and in this particular neighborhood, we get some odd angles and streets and intersections where ordinarily in the middle of a block, you wouldn't ever see anything on the roof. But because there's an intersecting street and it's at an angle and you're looking right at it and you can see it from a distance, and that raises this kind of a difficulty as we're approaching it, because we always want to have the languages minimally visible. So that's the way we'll be approaching it.
And this is like very precious, not just another run of the mill. This is one of those special, unique New York City districts, historic district. Turtle Bay, there's one like that.
Just
We
one.
had a similar situation to this not long ago on Waverly Place, and the position of the St. John Church and the parish house and sort of an assembly building, which is now a theater, all conspired, as it were, to make a situation very similar to this. And it was a somewhat blending rooftop addition, and we recommended approval of that.
All right, so.
Okay, are there any questions from the public? I do not see any. Oh, wait, Zach Weinstein has his hand up. Hang on, Zach, I will. Okay, Zach, you should be good to speak now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, I don't have an opinion on this particular application, but I did just want to comment on what the applicant was implying about visibility from outside a historic district. The applicant seemed to be implying that that's not important or somehow doesn't count. And as the committee has pointed out, that's absolutely not the case. And if some applicant came to my neighborhood and started making that argument, I'd be pretty unhappy. And I really think it should be clear that that implication is not allowable and really should not be part of these hearings. Anyway, thank you very much. And I appreciate your folks pointing that out.
Okay, thanks, Zach. Anybody else? No, okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for coming in. You can stay or you can just tune in. We're going to have a business session at the end to discuss our recommendations.
Okay.
Are we ready to?
No, not yet. I'm looking for our next.
Okay. I'll read it in the meantime. 817 Washington Street. To replace the storefront infill at Washington and Gansevoort Streets, enlarge ground floor masonry openings at Gansevoort Street and install new signage above entry doors at existing marquees.
Hello, good evening. My name is Robert Bianco. I am joined tonight with I believe with Stuart Romanoff, who's the building owner, and Harrison Lawrence, also from PKSB. I'm with PKSB Architects, representing the owner of 817 Washington Street in the.
Hey, Robert, do you need anybody else elevated?
If you see Stuart Romanoff or Harrison Lawrence, oh, I see Harrison Lawrence has just been elevated. You can bring them in, but I'll be making the presentation.
Okay.
This is, as Chenault stated, is an application for ground floor facade alterations along Washington Street and Gansevoort. I will share my screen.
Morning.
We're good.
Okay, great.
I've lost sound.
Just making sure that I can advance the slides. Okay. And can you see this next page?
Yep.
Okay, the project is located in the Gansevoort Market Historic District. We are at the edge of the district shown here on the map. The historic district boundary shown in the dashed red line. We are right at the edge at an intersection that's really undergone a lot of transformation since this district was designated in 2003. When the district was designated, Washington Street was really more of the primary retail drag. Since designation, there's been a lot of activity, including, of course, the High Line opening as a major pedestrian thoroughfare. The Whitney Museum was relocated to the corner of Gansevoort and the West Side Highway. And there's been significant pedestrian improvements along 9th Avenue. So all of those changes have really refocused attention on Gansevoort as a really active pedestrian plaza connecting these two very active pedestrian corridors and a lot of new retail activity along Gansevoort. So a little historic background on the building. The building dates back to 1886. It was originally constructed as a 5-story building with residences above and retail stores on the ground floor. And in this photo from the 1920s, you can see that the Washington Street facade was really kind of the primary frontage of this building, with Gansevoort as a more secondary presence. This is a photo from the late 1930s. You can see the edge of our building here. It looks like it has been largely gutted on the interior in preparation of the removal of the top 2 floors. And then you can see by 1940, the elevated train line, which is now the High Line Park, was erected and the top 2 stories were removed from our building. And then this is the 1980s tax photo. At this point, a very large, prominent marquee was added along Washington Street, kind of further reinforcing Washington as that main presence. And then this is a photo from 2007, shortly after the district was designated. The building does have 2 other retail frontages. Those storefronts were replaced prior to designation. And this is a current photo of the building standing on the stairs leading up to the High Line, looking back at Washington Street. Again, the 2 retail stores fronting onto Washington Street, not part of this application. Our application includes the tenant at the corner that wraps around to Gansevoort. And this is a photo at the sidewalk level, looking back at the building with the Washington Street frontage and Gansevoort. It's the closer image of the Washington Street storefront. Looking back toward 9th Avenue on Gansevoort Street, there is a portion of original masonry facade on Gansevoort. This facade has been slightly altered. One of the window openings has been enlarged and dropped to the sidewalk level to allow for a secondary entrance door. But a lot of original historic details remain that are characteristic of the Queen Anne style of this building. And then just another vantage point, seeing the High Line and the Whitney Museum in the distance. And a little more detail at the historic portion of the masonry facade along Gansevoort Street that we will be altering. So looking at our project in the context of the larger neighborhood, we wanted to look at how we relate to the other storefronts along Washington Street. At the top of the page is the full block elevation along Washington Street, with a little bit across the street, across Gansevoort. And then on the bottom of the page is our proposed design. So we would, on Washington Street, it's a very simple proposal. We're proposing to simply continue the current configuration of the remaining storefronts along Washington Street, carrying that transom line all the way to the corner. And then on Gansevoort Street, existing condition of the full block shown at the top. Our building is at the corner with non-historic infill between cast iron columns at the corner and the historic masonry facade. We would, at the non-historic infill, we would propose continuing that configuration from Washington Street. And then at the brick portion, we are proposing enlarging some of the openings there. And I'll get into the details of those in the next couple pages. But I do want to point out that the other buildings along Gansevoort Street all feature very large storefront openings, large expanses of glass and metal storefront, and those storefronts all extend down to the sidewalk level. And this is apparent even when looking across the street on Gansevoort, which is entirely within the historic district. You can see this is an unfolded elevation. So the bottom is the upside down elevation of the south side of Gansevoort Street, where all the buildings have very large expanses of glass and metal storefront extending to the sidewalk or with minimal bulkheads. So just zooming in on our building, this is the existing elevation along Washington Street. Our scope of work is just at the corner retail tenant. There are existing cast iron columns with non-historic infill. And we would propose to replace the non-historic infill with a storefront configuration that matches the existing retail storefronts on Washington Street. And then on Gansevoort Street, the cast iron bays turned the corner for 3 bays, and then we transitioned to the more historic brick facade. So at this facade, we would continue that storefront configuration from Washington Street around the corner. At the masonry portion, we are proposing to combine the three easternmost masonry openings into a larger display window that's more suitable for retail use, but we are proposing to retain one of the window openings at the easternmost portion of the masonry facade. And the reason why we are dropping this sill is because it is at a very high level, which doesn't really allow for a lot of visibility into the retail space. So we're dropping that down to a more typical bulkhead height, but retaining the corbelled brick detail below the sill. We are proposing to remove 2 other instances of that corbelled brick detail, but we felt it was important to keep one of those details so that we could retain the Queen Anne detailing that is characteristic of this building. This is a full floor plan showing the full building footprint. The other 2 retail spaces to the north remain unchanged, and we are proposing to replace the non-historic infill at the corner and modify the masonry openings along Gansevoort. This is the proposed condition. And an enlarged plan detail at the corner, existing condition. These are the 4 punched openings along Gansevoort, and the combined opening, and still retaining that single window. These are enlarged plan details at the non-historic infill along Washington and at the corner on Gansevoort. And then enlarged details at the masonry portion showing the 2 piers that are being removed, replaced with a larger display window, but we're still maintaining a tripartite configuration there to relate to the 3 windows above. These are existing and proposed wall sections at the non-historic storefront infill. And I will point out that we're proposing some placeholder signage. These would be cutout letters on rails that would be attached to the storefront framing above each entrance door. And then wall sections at the masonry portions on the left-hand side, existing condition at the window that we are retaining. You can see here the corbelled brick detail that we would retain, but in a lowered position at a more typical sill height of 2'6". And then on the right-hand side, similar section at the existing windows that we would be combining into one large display window extending all the way down to the sidewalk. And before I show you what this all looks like in 3D, we did want to go through a few precedents of other buildings within the district that have enlarged masonry openings in retail spaces to allow for more transparency and visibility. This is an example at the corner of West 13th Street and 9th Avenue, where masonry openings along 13th Street were widened to allow for more light and visibility into the retail store. Of course, the Restoration Hardware, very visible 2-story addition, but this project did also include a lot of alteration at the ground floor retail space with large expanses of metal and glass and display windows extending down to the sidewalk. This is a building at the corner of Greenwich and Gansevoort Street. The Gansevoort facing facade did undergo some alterations where two smaller masonry openings were combined into one masonry opening with a large display window, again extending down to the sidewalk level. This is an example actually at the site that's catty corner across from us at Gansevoort and Washington on the southwest side. Large portions of masonry were removed and replaced with large display windows and a glass door extending to the sidewalk. And finally, further west, this is within the district, but across the street from the Whitney Museum, where portions of masonry facade were removed and replaced with glass storefront. And finally, what will this all look like? This is again that view from standing on the steps leading up to the High Line, looking back at our building. This is the existing condition with the non-historic infill at the corner. We're proposing to essentially continue the storefront configuration that already exists on the building all the way to the corner. So not a huge change there. A closer look from the sidewalk level, existing condition, and the proposed, again, carrying that configuration all the way. And looking around the corner back toward 9th Avenue, existing condition, and our proposed with some alterations at the brick portion, which you can see better in this view. This is the existing condition. Our application would include removal of these retractable awnings and all of this visible conduit. So more of the brickwork above would become visible. Some of the brick detailing will be removed at these two piers. However, each type of detail still remains on this facade. So we're retaining the sawtooth banding, the brownstone band, and since this truck is in the way, this is a better view where you can see we're retaining that corbelled brick detail at the windowsill. The signage that we're showing is just placeholder signage for now, but we're just indicating cutout letters 18 inches high above each entrance door and signage hung from the underside of the marquee, which is consistent with signage that already exists on Washington Street. But overall, this application is to strengthen the retail presence along Gansevoort and to really anchor this corner, given that there's been a lot of transformation. There's a lot of foot traffic now along Gansevoort Street, and this could really enliven this corner even more than it already is, and could really be a gateway from the historic district over to the High Line. So thank you, and I'll
Thank you.
happy to answer questions.
Just on the last point of the signs, how many of these sign bands that you've shown are there?
There are 2 on Gansevoort and one on Washington.
And the
and one each
the
hanging
dimensions and the size of the letters, height of the letters.
18 inches high.
And the letters?
The letters on the rails are 18 inches high.
And how high are the sign bands themselves?
How high above the sidewalk?
No, what is the dimension of them? The width and height of the sign of the area in which the letters appear.
Oh, I don't have the exact dimension, but it's really dependent. This is placeholder signage, so it's really dependent on the logo of the
but the
actual
opening
tenant.
is how big. It depends. It's important to know in relationship to the letter.
It's about, well, these are paired entry doors, so it's probably about 6'6" wide.
I'm sorry, you're not clear.
About 6'6", approximately.
And how high?
18 inches.
So the letters can't be as high as the area.
It's a transom. It's not.
Yeah,
a
this
sign.
is a these are cutout letters sitting in front of glass. So,
Okay,
so
the glass on
clear.
which the letters are glued to.
Yeah, they're actually attached to rails
Okay,
that would then be attached to the storefront.
and how big is that opening? That's what I'm trying to find out. There's an area surrounded by framing in which the letters appear. That is, for all practical purposes, a glass sign band.
The transom.
It's a glass transom, yeah.
Oh,
What
it is glass.
Wait,
Yeah.
I'm
This
going
is
to
a glass-
interrupt here to
It's a
clarify.
glass transom.
Robert, what we are trying to find out is what is the size of the glass transom? You've told us that the placeholder letters
I see. What's the size of the transom
18
itself?
inches high, but you've also told us that that space is 18 inches.
No, I misunderstood. The height of the transom is approximately 30 inches.
30, okay, thank you. And the width?
Approximately 6'6".
Okay.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay,
I have no other questions now.
all right. Brian or Anita, do you have anything?
What is the designation date for that historic district?
2003.
2003. So have there been any changes to the either facade since?
No, well, minor. These storefronts that we are basing the new storefront configuration on, these were replaced just before the district was designated around 2001 or 2. And then the lobby entrance door on Gansevoort was recently replaced a couple years ago, and that was done at a staff level permit.
Thank you.
But otherwise, no changes since the designation.
Well, you are proposing to take out a chunk of historic material.
Yes.
I guess that's something that we could object to.
Yeah.
Because that's
We
our,
can talk about that in our business session.
Yeah.
Would you mind showing us, please, what the signage will look like on the Washington side? I was a little unclear about what you're planning there.
On the Washington side, it's just signage above the entrance door and one hanging sign below the marquee. Let's see.
And all those other bays, what about those?
Pull up here. Yeah, so it's just above here, and actually the the hanging sign we're proposing is a bit out of frame here. But we would be matching the existing signage that already exists along Washington Street.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Does anybody else on the committee have a question?
Yes, this blade sign or the sticking out sign or what?
The hanging sign, yeah.
I couldn't see, and I didn't get that in the presentation at all. So what is it and how big is it and so forth?
Here, there's one on the Gansevoort
this looks
marquee.
very big, doesn't it? To me, maybe it's the rendering.
Yeah, it's about 2 feet high by 4 feet wide.
And there are two of those.
There's one on the Gansevoort marquee and one around the corner on the Washington marquee.
2 feet by how many?
48 inches.
I would suggest being sure to get this precise and clear
Sure.
for the
Sure.
presentation. to I would like to look at the Gansevoort elevation.
You want to see the elevation, not the, this is the
Yeah,
rendered view.
to see the windows.
Sure. Yep. So this is the existing elevation and then the proposed.
Okay, this one. What I'm concerned about is on the east side, the three-part window.
Yeah.
It needs the transom continued.
You know, we
Particularly in comparison to the one on the corner, which has a certain form to it, and this
Has a lower.
now has the appearance of not being finished or being a garage entrance or something. It just somehow doesn't balance with the other side.
Yeah, we had talked about that both with ownership and with landmarks. I don't know if it's clear here, but the heads of the display windows do not align. The storefronts at the cast iron piers extend up much higher, and the existing doors are at 8 feet. So if we continued that transom bar, you get a really skinny transom at this portion of storefront, which would be an odd proportion, we thought. Or if you tried to get it to be a better proportion, then the transom bars wouldn't line up. So there'd always be kind of this jumping. We looked at it. We felt that this was a cleaner
Did you consider
solution,
a solid piece as something like a signboard?
Oh, that's interesting.
Continue that.
That's an interesting thought. No, we hadn't looked at that. But we could.
It's just the starkness of everything else that has a kind of interesting configuration, and that doesn't.
I see.
Okay, that's just a comment. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else from the committee? All right, let's go to the public. Is there anybody from the public? There, Zach. Okay, we'll get you talking. Okay. Zach, can you talk?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can. Great, thank you.
Yeah, Zach Weinstein, 92 Horatio Street, St. Gansevoort. When I first read about this proposal, I thought, well, it doesn't really seem like it's going to be too substantial a change and probably not that problematic. When I started looking at the renderings and the plans more closely, I was actually much more concerned than I expected to be, and it really have two issues here. The first is the removal of the doors on the Washington Street side and their replacement with much larger sheets of plate glass. That kind of sort of unbroken, excuse the expression, glass in a brick building in the meat market doesn't seem typical to me at all. And it works against the repeated vertical patterns of the columns, not just in this on this facade, but in all of the facades stretching north down Washington to Little West 12th Street. It's a very, very vertical design, and taking out the mullions currently formed by the doors, replacing them with sheets of glass, it diminishes that character. It minimizes that pattern, and the result, looking at the renderings at least, seems very bland. It seems very uncharacteristic. It makes it feel like a modern mall installation as opposed to a historic building. The second concern I have is on Gansevoort Street, and it's the applicant talked about altering the brickwork on Gansevoort Street. They're not altering it, they're removing it. It's this demolition. I mean, this is intact original material. It's fine brickwork that very definitely contributes to the historic character of the street. And I really don't think that there is any justification for simply taking it out, let alone replacing it with very ahistorical plate glass. And I would strongly urge the committee to push back strongly against that. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
I just had based on what Zach was saying, the building represents a front facade on Washington. And the Gansevoort is sort of the back of the house, the side view. So I think that's something that is now all muddled. There's something kind of, very nice and clear about that, even though I know Gansevoort has a lot of people and there's money to be made and all that. I think you're losing something by completely eliminating that masonry back.
Thank you.
Is Zach finished?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
could we
yes, I
go
am.
back
Thanks.
To the elevation we were looking at again when I spoke.
Sure.
And the original now of the existing.
Yep.
Okay. I'm just asking the committee to get in their mind what we're seeing here, how much has been reviewed and how different it is, so that when we discuss it, it's clear in our immediate minds.
Yeah.
Just if you would show
It's
just
clear. Thank you.
the window that's being retained
Got
is the
This
easternmost tiny window. Yeah. And the area, if you could describe it along with that, with your cursor, from the area of the full.
We would be combining these three
Right. Okay.
openings.
So
you'd
it's
lose
two small windows are being incorporated with the
the
full
door.
length narrow window.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, just so that we're very clear in our minds when we start to discuss. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, anybody else?
Are we concluded, Susan?
I think we are. Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
Okay, thank you.
2 more.
3 East 10th Street to enlarge previously approved window openings at the rear on the basement and first floor, excavate for a new sub-cellar and rear yard paving. Is applicant there?
I'm looking for Joseph Vance on the attendee list. What do I see? I see him. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Okay, no, I've got him. Don't worry. Thank you.
Good evening, committee.
Did you hear the what I read before? And is that the extent of what you're presenting?
Yes, but I do apologize in advance. I had asked Florence to add the note about expanding the 2 rear openings on the rear facade at the lower 2 floors. But since then, I've been advised by staff that because those were previously approved and they have not been signed off yet, that instead it would be a staff level post-approval amendment to those earlier applications. So the scope of work is the sub-cellar.
Sub-cellar and the rear yard paving.
Correct.
And that's all. Okay. I'll correct the.
Okay. Are we ready?
It's a whole nother floor underground. It's huge.
So again, I'm Joe Vance, Joseph Vance Architects. I'm the architect.
If you would, however you plan, just incorporate well what we've seen so that we're refreshed, since this was some time ago, on the context of all this.
Oh, gosh, I don't have all the prior approvals. That was they were all done by a prior
just
architect.
describe how it fits into what.
Correct. I can describe that. So I'm the architect of record for this. I do have to say I've lost track of how many times I presented to the commission in 40 years. This is the first time I presented something where nothing is visible above ground. So it's a little unique for me. So this is—
It's a new low.
This is an altered Greek revival row house built in 1833. The prior people did everything in pieces and fits and starts, but their prior approvals were for a bulkhead, a stair bulkhead, stair and elevator bulkhead, which cannot be seen. They did, somehow they built it before approval. They got a violation for it. They, after that, went to a hearing, got it approved, and we just recently had it inspected and removed the violation. They had new windows in this facade approved and installed. That's complete. In the rear of there was never an enlargement as part of these applications. In the rear, the lower floor facing the yard, which happens to be the cellar, and the first floor, parlor floor, have previously approved enlarged openings, which now are just going to be, I don't know, one is going to be made 24 inches wider and the other one 18 inches wider for some alignment purposes. So that was the extent of this project. So we're here on 3 East 10th, where the third building in from the corner. This is the existing rear yard. There is, oh, you can see these openings here. Oh, so these are the previously approved openings, which have, the windows have been installed, but they hadn't been signed off yet. So we're making them, I guess it looks like 18 inches wider on both sides. The heights remain, and there'll be steel multi-pane windows like this. The balcony, again, previously approved and built, is going to be pulled in on both sides, in the left and the right. But again, it's not part of this application. Staff is telling me that that's a post-approval amendment. We'll do it at that level. But what we can see back here that's important, there's existing brick garden walls, all 3 sides. Those remain. You can see as you exit the back of the house, there's one lower level that's roughly level with the floor inside, and then the yard steps up in the back. So what is happening?
Could I ask one more thing?
Yes, sir.
It may be you've incorporated, if not, if you would just add as you come to it. Every time something that involves underpinning, be sure to point that out at the time. We're very
Correct.
interested in it, and sometimes it gets done later and it gets confusing.
Correct.
Thank
Correct.
you.
Yep. So this section, these are the section on the left is what's existing. The section on the right is what is proposed. So obviously the big work is going down. It's roughly 12 foot 2 inch, roughly 12 feet, 12 foot and a half inch technically of excavation to create a new level, a new subcellar, and that goes under the rear yard. It stops the required 5 feet before the property line for the commission rules. The rear yard, you'll see, changes only, the elevations of the rear yard change only slightly. The step up happens closer to the house than it does now. And then it has one more step toward the back. On the right-hand side of the right-hand section, that white rectangle that you see cut in section, that's the existing garden wall separating the back of this property from the back of the property behind us on 11th Street. That wall gets underpinned so that it stay and reinforced so that it stays in place. That's that part.
The rear wall of the property.
Correct. These are the floor plans. Our team, we do have, you know, from my experience, kind of a dream team. So the SOE, the supportive excavation, and people in charge of all the underpinning and how everything's going to be done is Langen. The structural engineers are Silman. The general contractor is Highline, who's done who knows how many townhouses in this area. We think that the excavation contractor is going to be Savetti. We're talking to 1 or 2 other ones and still vetting them. They're being, in my 40 years experience, fairly conservative. In fact, you'll see how it impacts the floor plan. So the usable space inside that subcellar for most of the footprint only ends up being 16 feet 1 inch wide. That's due to their response to what is required. A lot of it has to do with the building. As you face this building, the building to the left is owned by NYU. It's a fairly narrow building built in the early 1900s, but it's, I forget, 10 or 11 stories tall. And it has a bit of a unique foundation system. These gray rectangles that you see here, those actually go across their property, sort of like there's beams that whole building sits on. So because of that, they want to ledge in. That's why the walls on this side are so thick. They're ledging in and going down because they're only underpinning the NYU building. So I know it's hard to see on your screen, but you see the dark gray squares. That's the main supports of the NYU building. The gravelly looking indication you see in between, that's underpinning that will only happen between those piers. Otherwise, we're doing a big ledge going into the 3 East 10th property, plus a liner wall. And since they're doing that, they're doing on the other side too. So that's so it's a combination of underpinning and ledging. And then at the back of the property, it becomes traditional underpinning, where there's a yard on the east side and a yard on the to the north on the left of our view. So that's basically the extent of the project. You guys have approved all of these, so you know about them more than I do, but these are other similar cellar expansions that went under rear yards approved, it looks like, since 2017. One of these is mine, 238 West 11th, which came by you in 2023. And that's my presentation.
Hey, thank you.
I understand that the underpinning on the west side. On the east side, is it continuous for the whole distance?
Correct.
And what are we seeing? Is the ledging only in line with the columns on the west side?
It happens on both. So, whoops, didn't mean to make
Is the ledging what we see and that looks like dotted?
Yes, correct. That's a combination. It's a combination of ledge and underpinning both.
Okay. And in the front of the building, what is the clearance?
Boy, I'm not sure what just
No,
happened
it
to
would
my
be 5
screen.
feet in the back.
There we go. And pardon the question.
You're 5 feet clear of the rear property line.
Right.
In front, it appears to be set back some distance from. Is it set back from the front of the house? It just looked like
No. Well, the floor plan ends up being the underpinning goes down because we're supporting the front facade. So the underpinning goes down all the way, and then the thickness of all of that comes into the space. So it's a much smaller than the actual cellar above. And then all the other stuff you see on here, these are the SOE drawings. So all these other diagonals and dashes and all that, that's all the temporary bracing that they're indicating that has to happen while the work is going on.
Okay, Susan.
Okay, anybody? I think it looks pretty straightforward to us in this room, but if anybody has any questions, Brian, you look like you might have something.
With this slide you have up right now, I was caught by surprise because on all the previous slides, all of the front of the building is on the left side. And so suddenly we come to this and
yeah, I apologize. Yeah, we caught that just a little bit too late for me to start flipping everything around, but I apologize for that. Yeah, on this one, the street is to the right.
Yes.
And I think we understand with your recitation of the firms involved and so forth. We'll have a what is a boilerplate for any underpinning is provided that it's done with care and professionals are doing it and so forth, and it doesn't endanger the project. So all
Yes. So in this case, we are thankful for seeing such a thorough and complete depiction of the structural work.
Yeah, thank you.
And then, as you're
And
aware, there'll be the
workshop of
typical
underpinning presentations.
Yeah, and then as you know, there'll be the typical peer review from
Dan
landmarks as well as the DOB.
That's who does this work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we wanted to ask a question here in the room or just express a concern on this one.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Oh, I thought.
No, we'll go to the public. We'll go to the public now.
So we need
So,
Okay.
so please come here so that you can be heard.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Here's fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I must say that coming from another part of the world where construction happens without any kind of oversight, I am overwhelmed and in awe of boards like this with people like your knowledge, where you're keeping the character and richness of our neighborhood alive. So thank you for all that you do. We do have a concern. We live on the property right behind East 10th Street. So we are 12 East 11th Street. I haven't lived there for a long time, but I'm raising 2 babies in that house. And I love this neighborhood. So we wanted to share some concerns with this group. Ever since we have found out about the construction of this sub-cellar, we have been in conversations with some experts, which include some architects that we have spoken to, and as well as the construction manager for our own property. And we have 3 major concerns that we'd like to put as questions before this august committee for your expert consideration. You guys know better than I do. But the first one is, and these are 2 important words, the unpredictable and potentially devastating impact on the structural integrity of the buildings around this particular building, East 10th Street. The experts that we have spoken to have confirmed that foundation settlement and soil displacement can seriously compromise the structural stability of nearby buildings. Crucially, and this is a very important point that we had to go back and reconfirm because I didn't want to misspeak to this body, there is no reliable way to predict the impact this work will have of digging yet another level or a sub-cellar underneath building. There's no reliable way to predict the impact of the adjoining properties. And this board will have much better information on the example I'm about to give, and you will correct me if I get my facts wrong. But we have a real world example right next door. There was an excavation at 14th to 16th Fifth Avenue that followed all the city guidelines, and it still led to severe structural damage, and entire buildings had to be evacuated. And if I have my facts correct, some of those people have still not returned to the buildings that needed to be excavated. And that was after following all city guidelines because of the excavation that was done. So the experts we have spoken to are very concerned about the digging of this whole new layer underneath the building because of the structural stability of the buildings around it due to foundation settlement issues and soil displacement. So that's issue number 1. Issue number 2, if I may proceed, is groundwater disruptions. So we were told that this is a potential recipe for water damage and mold growth, because as they're excavating for the sub-cellar, it may alter the groundwater flow, and that may cause water accumulation and seepage into neighboring properties. That will result in water damage, mold growth, and even further structural issues to the ones that I already mentioned in the point 1. And these risks don't just affect property values, they threaten the health and safety of residents, and my babies live. So I'm concerned as a mother about what this is going to do. I'm not even going to mention the vibration and noise. I respect that. When we built, we made noise, we made vibrations. We welcome our neighbors with open hands. We don't care about that. So I'm not going to mention that. I'm just going to mention things which are more fundamental. The last very important point I want to make is about monitoring systems. There have been talk about putting monitors are in place, and we are told that they'll be monitoring. But how do we know that these systems are actually effective given the past failures of monitoring systems, such as in the example that I provided for the 14 to 16 Fifth Avenue buildings, which was extensively monitored and still this happened? And we can't help but wonder who is going to oversee this monitoring. If the builders themselves, and I respect Mr. Vance's vast experience in this field, but if they themselves are going to oversee the monitoring, this is a clear conflict of interest. If the person who is monitoring themselves and monitoring, I know my husband, if he monitored his drinking himself, he would drink all week. And if I wasn't there to monitor him.
So funny. So throwing him under the bus here.
So
Yeah, I'm sorry, Lady Fitted.
So I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoken on an irrelevant point, but I just want to say that these points, the unpredictability and the potentially devastating impact on structural integrity, when crucially there is no reliable way to predict the impact this work will have on adjoining properties, combined with groundwater disruptions, combined with the failure of monitoring systems and the conflict of interest, makes us very concerned. And we wonder if this subcellar, which is already a beautiful house, is it really that necessary when there are hundreds of residents living in this beautiful area? Do we need to compromise and risk that? Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to speak to that. Thank you. First, the building on Fifth Avenue is a very different situation. It's an excavation, including stone and whatnot, to a very deep level of an empty lot, and it was being done with jackhammers and on a very large scale. What you report about it is correct, but I believe that we should look to similar excavations in similar situations for comparisons. The structural integrity of adjacent buildings and indeed the property itself is exactly the thing that I spoke about at the end of the presentation, that we're very concerned about it and that there must be assurance from those involved. And reputable firms were actually listed for this. And all of this is monitored by the Department of Buildings. And they are very strict about their monitoring and on-site visits and so forth about this. The water damage and moisture is something that if there is, I'm not quite sure what that means, but if they were to strike a well, that would be dealt with on the spot as part of the routine work and what is monitored. Vibration and noise, we know that there would be some, and that's routine in construction. And and then monitoring separately, Department of Buildings, and they're very concerned with it. We have had instances of minor difficulties with these, but it seems that by and large, these go forward as big as it seems without incident. So that's how I could reply. If others on the committee want.
Do you usually put in your reso or in this part of it that the owners have to reach out to the owners? Sorry about that, the owners need to reach out to their neighbors and discuss protection or scheduling.
It's something that's asked for. I don't recall. Is the gentleman still there that he can answer?
Yes.
If outreach is.
Am I still on?
Yes, you are, Joseph.
Yeah. Yeah. So the building department. So any property that we that our underpinning extends under the property line, that means you're working on that individual's property. So you have to have what's called a license agreement with those properties to go under that. And let me just, sorry, I just lost my presentation. Let me just check. So in the rear, we actually are not, our underpinning on the rear, because the individual's property, they don't have a wall on their side, it's just their yard. So our underpinning is just going to be directly under the wall that's fully on our property. It doesn't actually extend under their property at all. So that property isn't affected by the underpinning. The ones on the east and the west, they're currently working on the license agreements with those neighbors to get official permission from them, which is required in order to be able to do the underpinning.
Also to eliminate so much anxiety. I mean, I think sometimes the construction manager would develop it. I think the one-on-one, the personal touch goes a long way with something like this.
Correct. And the monitoring is done not only by the actual monitors that are installed in the surrounding buildings. They're all automated. That's all done by an independent testing agency.
Yeah, it's independent.
And if, believe me, I've done a lot of these. If anything so much as vibrates over, I forget the LPC required measurement, but all of our phones explode with text messages, and the Department of Buildings does too. So everyone gets an instantaneous alert if there's any movement or vibration outside of the site.
And that monitoring system will include this property on 11th Street, yes?
I believe so. I'm not the geotech engineer. I don't know.
Right.
I haven't seen. I don't know what they're actually doing, but I believe there's vibration and those that you see them, these visual tags they stick on a building to make sure there's no vertical movement. I don't know how far that extends since the building isn't right up against the property, but we can find that out.
And I think we would suggest you be in touch with the people behind, particularly
correct,
about the noise and just disturbance.
And giving people a phone number.
In the excavation.
Correct. And then there the issue about water, that's an extensive part of this project. Various measures are being taken that as part of the work, they'll be going around the perimeter of this property, doing various techniques to contain, there's groundwater, under the ground. So they're doing various measures to contain that, to make our site basically a bathtub, so that when we extract water to dig part of a hole, that doesn't make the water come out from underneath an adjacent building. So it doesn't allow it prevents them from settling. A lot of times when you have the damages like we've all heard about, it's because the people weren't experienced and they sucked out too much water, which caused the buildings to settle on both sides. Any other questions?
Further comments or questions, Susan?
No, the only thing is I would hope that it is clear that there needs to be an avenue of communication between.
Yes, I just literally texted the owner's representation and said, please reach out to the owners to the rear.
Can I just add one?
And we'll add that into the.
We'll put that in our resolution.
Clearly.
You had a list.
I hope that's the ladies' concerns.
You had a list of comparable vertical subcellar excavations. Would love to just take a look at that list if it's available at all.
Yeah, we can.
You can just.
I mean horizontal. Sorry.
Yes, I think that should be done privately as outside of this meeting, but I would hope that you would all be able to do that. All right.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public here? Any other raised hands? Nope. So we can now move. Thank you, Joseph. We can now move to 232 West 11th Street, and I will elevate.
The application is to place a garbage bin enclosure in front of the church building.
And great. So am I able to share?
So the applicant is here in person.
I've given you the ability to join as a panelist, so you should be able to.
Excellent. Well, good evening. Thank you. My name is Tito Charneco, and I am the pastor of the Manhattan Seventh-day Adventist Church located on 232 West 11th Street. And this is one of my hats, I suppose, coming here and presenting to you about this project that we have been working on for about 5 months now. As you are likely aware, the city had some stipulations that came out last year in the requirements as to the times when the trash could be put out on the street. And sometime later, it came out with new stipulations that specified that it was also necessary for the trash to be placed in a container. The church, unfortunately, does not have a space from where that could be done. And in the presentation, you could see here where it is located in slide number 2. And it's followed by a picture of the church from 1940. And then also in slide number 4, what is being proposed. So there is, I'll show you a couple more recent pictures in a moment, but there are no alleyways from where we could gain access to trash receptacles or trash cans and bringing them outside so that they can be emptied when the trash collection comes about. And so one of the things that we have been exploring for some time is having enclosures out on the street so that we can store the garbage there, have them locked, and then on the days that the garbage is collected, we could take the trash bins, put them on the curb a little bit further down, excuse me, and then have them collected and then store those again. The next slide shows a little bit more closely. This is a street level from above, and it shows a little bit more closely where the dimensions of these enclosures. There's 2 of them, and each one holds 2 trash containers, and it's 4 feet 6 inches. It would be side by side. And you could see there that there is 5 feet from the end of one to the tree pit, and from the wall it's 7.5 feet, and from there all the way to the edge of the sidewalk is 11 feet and 2 inches. The next slide, which is number 6, shows what it would look like as we're.
Sir, for the dimensions, please, what is the total area that's occupied by the 2 side by side?
So that would be 8, that's 9 feet.
By.
As they're side by side?
Yeah, and then it's 20.
Yeah, but there's one footprint for the 2, is that right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't follow you.
It's one footprint for the 2 receptacles.
It's 1 foot for.
And what is the depth of the?
Oh, yes. That's 43 inches high at the front, 47 in the back, and here are the specifics.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll pick up.
4 foot deep. He wants to know the
Sure.
square footage.
Yes. I just wasn't there yet, but yes, that's the actual dimensions of the device.
You have 2 of them.
We have 2 of them, and each one holds 2 bins. And so what we are asking, of course, we're in communication with the Department of Transportation, and they are trying to figure this out because the request from the city came out recently, and initially we were told during the application process that it was not a problem, and then they came back and they said, well, it's necessary that they be affixed somehow. And so they said, we need to come and have the conversation with LPC and now the commission board, the community board, in order to figure that out, so that we can move forward. I have here, this is what it would look like. You can see the little red square where it would be. And in order to affix it, we don't want it affixed to the building, but what we explored was the prospect of having can you see this? You probably cannot. Okay. I have another slide and I'm going to share that with you so that you could see what we're looking as a solution. Have some screws that would be anchored into the sidewalk and then have the devices, the enclosures affixed through these eyelets.
On the sidewalk.
The device and then on the sidewalk, yes. And so that's what we are requesting the community board and consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's muted and he's.
Shinalta, if
Is
you're
this an
in your-
application from the landmarks or from the Department of Transportation?
We are actually having to apply with both. We are coming on
Okay,
behalf.
then what we will do is we'll make two separate resolutions. One will be to the landmarks and one will be to the to the Transportation Department for the revocable permission to have it there. And they'll go to the proper place at the proper time. Okay. I don't have any questions.
Anita.
Yes, could you go to second to last? No, I'm sorry, let me see, what does it say here? Slide 6.
Yes, let me find that. Slide number 6.
Stop.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, my question is, why didn't you just move them over so they're not in front of the window?
Right.
Well,
driving me crazy.
So yes, if we look here a little bit closer, there is a stipulation as to how close it can be to the wall. And in picture slide number 9, there is I'm not sure what you call it, but there is like a rack, I suppose, like for air. There's a window that goes to the
Air
restroom.
intake.
Yes, and so we can't go any closer than that because otherwise it would be covering it.
Well, it's a problem from my point of view, because we're here to aesthetically, big time. And there's so little to interfere with, your mission is good, it's clear.
Yeah.
But to put it in front of a perfectly symmetrical facade, maybe you could put 2 on each side.
Well, that was going to be my question.
Sure.
My question is that it's quite a bit of massing there with the 4 feet 6 inches times 2. And, is there any reason that they all have to be ganged together like that?
I don't think so. It just seemed like to have them all
Well,
together.
there's a efficiency to having them all together.
Perhaps, right.
But I think aesthetically, if you just put them symmetrical, it may be offensive if the main entrance is on the left and everybody in their finest, then you want the trash as far away.
The main entrance is on the left.
Yeah.
And the west entrance is the emergency exit.
Well,
It would reinforce the perfect symmetry of the building too, which is
exactly
rather remarkable.
You can't put it in front of the window, okay? You can't do that.
One other thing is, if there were to be one, could you manage with 3 garbage cans?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, they only come in sets of 2, as you can see in the last picture. So it's a pair. And this is the one that the city is requiring. And it also fits the trash cans that the city is requiring.
Right.
And so that's going to be effective in a few months. So we figured might as well go for this and then we'll be covered for the future.
I hadn't realized that the city was specifying the outside.
But it does sound
Clearly,
like,
the 2 and 2 of the 1 and 1 would be.
yes, that sounds like a great solution.
Are there other questions?
Brian or Valerie?
You said it's not going to be affixed to the building, correct?
No, it's going to be affixed to the sidewalk.
Okay. Anybody from the public?
Thank you.
Any raised hands from the public? All right. Very good.
Thank you very
You
much.
have very beautiful flowers at your church. I pass it off.
Many hats you wear, huh? Okay, showtime.
Okay. Chenault, how do you want to do this? Do you want to review the proposals and then go to a discussion of Dapolito, or do you want to do that?
Shall we do our application? People may be staying to
Yeah.
listen and who are interested in them.
Okay.
6th Avenue, the lighting. Are we agreed that it's okay since?
Oh, yeah.
It depends what you mean by okay, but I don't think we have much room in this. I mean, and I think, you know,
I think we put them through enough.
yeah, and, you know, frankly, in terms of, you know, the overall aesthetics, you know, the horse has kind of left the barn with those really ugly signs that they have, so, you know.
Broadway, I've got oodles of whereases, but it all comes down to the question was a continuous transom line. And that seemed to be the only objection that I've gathered.
I think the other concern, Chenault, might be any kind of future life of that graphics panel, because all we can speak to at this moment, I suppose, is the applicant's, you know, testimony that this is what it's going to be now. But in a longer...
Is it a video screen? I didn't get that.
Well, it was unclear.
I thought it was a light box.
They did not talk about video screen. You did.
That a new one could be approved. That's
Oh, but when I asked about any kind, did it have, you know, what about a future motion graphics? There wasn't really, the answer was ambiguous, let's put it that way. So.
Or willful ignorance.
Well, it's very unappealing, the whole sign, even the type of text, the font. I mean,
It does have the virtue of being far away. So that part settled.
Right.
From you or from all of us?
I will look back through the application and ensure what it is. So if we could have wording, if it's a light box, it's a thing, and we could insist on a new one being approved.
Yeah, I mean, okay, we've got a note from the applicant, and it is not a video screen. But I still think we need to put something into the resolution.
Okay.
And then we need to unify it. That's
Can we get the applicant back on? And I'll just put the questions that have to do with the technical aspects of it.
All right. Mary, since you're still here, we'd like your input.
Yes, I am.
Okay,
It's just a graphic
this is
novel,
unusual, but
I guess we didn't want to promise what they're going to do in 10 years.
That's the blade saw.
Chanel, I can't hear you.
Translucent box.
Sorry, I'm not.
Can you hear us?
What's the question?
The question is it a translucent light box? If it is, it makes our task simple, that we approve this one and then the other one would have to come and be approved separately, if indeed we can approve the interior one.
My apologies. I don't know if I lost my ear pods and I'm trying to use the computer and I could hardly hear what you said.
Oh, I'll
all I
speak
can
up
say
then.
is that We're proposing a graphic on a wall.
Is it a translucent box?
No, it's a like some sort of film on a wall.
A projection?
No, it's if it was a painting, but it's not. It's, you know, it's a print on a plastic thing, and then they put it on a wall.
So
And
Chanel,
there's light behind.
it's not electronic imagery. It's not digital imagery.
Okay.
Is it illuminated?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
How is it lit then?
Okay, I'll look at exactly what's written and if the
yeah.
committee will agree.
It might be lit, I don't
And Mary
know.
said what it is, so.
Mary, we'd like to know about how it's lit then.
Right. I don't know. I would imagine they'd want it lit at night. It's an interior thing. But I don't know.
Okay.
I'll search through and see what there is on the application itself, which will be revealing.
Okay. Thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there other concerns about this?
Just before we leave this application, I think we should ask that the the storefront, the proposal, from a design point of view, is not pulled together. It's got too many disparate in a little tiny facade. So aside, the transom should be continued across, and then whatever else you can do to tie together this little narrow facade.
The overall configuration is busy and needs to be simplified.
And unified. Because I think they just look like they've done it by different hands or something.
Yeah, I totally
It's
agree.
pretty simple now, Chanel. I gotta tell you.
So it's an approved,
simple.
it's approved provided that.
Yeah, guys.
Do the approved provided that so-and-so happens, or deny unless so-and-so happens, which is the extreme of the thought. Provided that or deny unless are the two choices.
No, I would argue for deny unless because, and here's why, but I could be convinced otherwise, But the reason is that there seems to be this sort of continual sort of downward drift of the visuals in the district. And, when you aggregate many aspects of the approval process, and so many things have been regarding signage have now been taken to staff level, and so many types of signs, which in fact we would consider to be totally inappropriate within a historic district, are now approvable at staff level. These digital signs, understanding that that's not what's going on in this building, but just understanding that we see more and more of these and these kind of mall type stores. I mean, I'm very happy to see that there'll be a cast iron column, wonderful. But, it still looks like a mall store. And there are more and more of these stores that look like mall stores. And I think, you add up all these a little thing here, a little thing there, a little too much signage here, a little too much illumination there, a plastic sign here, et cetera. And I think, for that reason, I would suggest denying unless, and at least doing whatever we can to curtail the increased popularization of the mall type storefront.
It makes it clear it's beyond a suggestion.
Yeah. But, I don't know how the others feel.
Oh, no, I think it looks very unappealing. What we saw today, could it be any less? No. So I think we should ask that they step it up and make it look good.
Yeah.
And these frameless windows there's nothing historic about it. And I think we all understand that retail wants to be able to look in, but trust me, people can look in even if there is a little bulkhead and a
Well,
little.
a couple of feet off the top isn't really going to impact.
And only a giant would be affected by the continuing.
Exactly.
No, but that's always the argument is, well, we want the retail, and we're not against retail, but I think
And the same thing with presentation of visibility is not necessarily absolutely correlate to the number of square inches of glass.
Right. Absolutely not. And if it looks more
Indeed,
interesting and
Bergdorf
beautiful,
Goodman
people will
and-
look.
Bergdorf Goodman and Tiffany's both installed rather large, considering the size of the windows, framing in to pull it in order to make the focus better.
Yeah. Okay, so is there a unanimous opinion on this?
Yes.
Valerie and Brian?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Good.
Okay.
McDougal Street. Anything except the rooftop addition that wants to be discussed. That should move us along.
Well, we really only spent time on the rooftop addition. I don't know.
No, but the rear certainly was within the realm of what is done
So minimal.
every day. And then the question, I believe the only question on the rooftop addition is about the visibility and the way in which it's been, if not mitigated, addressed.
Right, I mean, the rear interventions are at staff level. So really, it's the visibility of the rooftop addition.
I would like for us to comment on that because that's, we see every time. We see the ground floor and the parlor floor and big windows. And while that suddenly is said to be on staff, I think we need to speak up on that, as we have before, so that it doesn't creep more and more.
Yeah.
Some subjective way.
Well, I guess the question, I mean, the text says minimally visible from a public thoroughfare. Well, it's more than minimally visible. But does it bother me? I guess is the next question, because the fact that the brick parapet wall is raised up, leveled out, a little couple of windows, I think
that is practically verbatim of what we probably said about the Waverly Place, about the St. John Church. Everyone remembers that. The two houses joined.
Yeah. Oh, so we can cut and paste, you're saying?
And I remember visiting it, and as an orange thing, it was horrible. I mean, it was visible. There was no question about it.
Yeah, I think the trick will be that the wall is done uniformly, the lot line masonry wall, that it doesn't look like it's been patched together.
And with this unique situation of what is the district and what's not, that's another, visibility from outside is another question, but it's altogether a unique situation.
It's also, I just want to point out, it's also a unique building collection. I mean, if it were to disturb the view to the garden, and it's a very highly regarded little historic spot. But I don't think they're doing any I don't think the intervention is bad, and it's okay with me.
I'd written just a bit about what this district is and what it means, because it's so an unusual place where they sit.
And these are tiny little houses, they are.
Well, I think the effort that was made to create a harmonious looking rooftop addition, is something that makes this application frankly different from many others that we see. And, personally, even though I'm a stickler for visibility from a public thoroughfare, I do think that
Outside of the district.
I do think that, we recently saw one where basically we sent it, our recommendation said either to not have it or to redesign it in a way that was not so discordant with the historic district. I mean, there's no discordance.
I mean, for example, we could say, well, we don't want, it's unusual the way these windows are. It's a flat wall, it pops up and bulkhead, okay. But then you have these 4 perfect little windows. That's unusual. The other thing would be if the wall was continuous and then you step back a foot or 2 and you had your penthouse, then you wouldn't interrupt that wall and it would look like it was, a bulkhead for a stair. Do you follow me? So it's but these are such tiny houses that, so that's another way to handle it, I guess. What do you think, Brian?
Well, so back to what Chuck was saying about the windows in the back, and I think this is minimal increase in the window of the parlor floor. Doesn't disturb any of the upper levels. And then the setback on the roof addition is minimally visible. So all of those, to me, add up to very minor changes to the back elevation. As far as the roof addition, it's very visible. I wonder if Anita's suggestion about setting it just off of the parapet wall rather than having it a sheer wall going all the way up straight might break it up a little and help. But it's a tough one because it kind of goes over the border of what we normally want to see. But it's
what I took the sheer facade to be, and perhaps this was interpretation, was when he emphasized that, and I pointed out it was a rare case, the desire to make it appear part of the house rather than to be a clear addition to the house. And I suppose that's why.
Well, a bulkhead is a bulk. I mean, that's the vocabulary, is that they're stair bulkheads. That's how we sort of romanticize these additions, I think. So if it's a bulkhead, that always is popped on top.
So what shall we say? Do we want to make any recommendation, or do we want to with
it's on those 4 windows in the same plane as the property wall, as the property line? That's just very unusual. It's also so many windows in a whole blank wall that maybe if it was stepped back a foot, then it would be a nice clean parapet without something extending above it, just behind it. So I would like that.
I would too.
Okay, here we have a choice of our third, the way we say it, as a recommendation rather than approval, one way or another.
Approval.
We approve with the recommendation is the gentlest thing we do. And do we want to be more stern than that in it?
I don't know.
Or the next step up is approved provided that.
Well, I think why not ask for that? Because it does help it, and we're all sort of breathing easier with that. So say that's what we want.
Okay.
I would agree with approved provided that, because where, where is our issue with this? Our issue is the visibility, right? And we know, we're not comfortable with the argument of, you see it, but you're looking through in a non-historic district to get to that's a little bit strenuous of an argument. But the fact of the matter is, it is visible from various places. And I do think that setting it back somewhat creates a structure that is more consistent with the visual vocabulary of row houses in a historic district.
I'm sorry I didn't say it because Zach did finally, but what we say is visibility from a public thoroughfare. And I know that because I have such trouble spelling.
I just said that.
And we don't say where the public thoroughfare is.
Is it okay if I make a quick comment about that rationale?
I did put a note in to acknowledge that that it's visible from a public thoroughfare, and that there's no ambiguity about its visibility. It's a question of how to deal with it.
Well, if you look at the photographs, it's pretty clear. And we don't all have to be lawyers. I don't care if it's in the district, outside the district. What does it look like on these especially precious buildings?
And we'll deal with the normal ones in the normal way, and when an exceptional one comes, we'll deal
this
with
is exceptional.
It's exceptional, and it's the whole row that it affects, It's not just, this is just the bookend.
Fine. Washington Street. Could we address everything to my notes and ear except the easternmost window? Does anything else have objections?
Oh, well, this is the big gouge of the historic material.
Right.
Yeah, I find this very objectionable to take out this much historic material. That brick wall, I think that entire brick wall should be much more carefully preserved.
I couldn't agree more.
I don't know if you heard when we were talking about it, Chanel, but the way the building was originally designed was that the whole fancy-ish facade was on Washington, and then
we lately had that very discussion about the Christopher Street, Bleecker Street. It's exactly the same.
Yes,
right. That's right.
With a row house.
That's right. And so now they sort of removed the masonry, the simple, sort of humble part of the building, and just made it a mishmash. And again, it's all about sell retail. So I do have some compassion for that, but this is not the solution.
No, I think, the intervention that was presented is unacceptably aggressive.
Right. I also noticed that on the floor plan, they made a point of moving the Washington Street main store entry over towards the middle. So it doesn't seem like there's any intention of subdividing this space into smaller stores. So if you want to see the product inside, you have the entire corner and the Washington Street front.
The turning the corner exists, so that's
right.
And that indeed is appropriate to the bit.
Well, they do have an entrance to that on Gansevoort, a new entrance to this shop.
I'm banging away here saying that the Gansevoort Street proposal loses the character of the secondary facade of the building.
Yes.
And an unacceptable amount of historic material being removed.
Yes.
That's what I've written originally.
It's not exactly, and it takes so much character away.
It really does.
So sad about it. and the signage I thought all around was oversized. It just
Yeah.
felt too big. The letters were too big. The sign's too big, everything's too big.
And we stick to the landmarks thing, not the underlying pure greed of what it is. I did that. You make more money if you have a bigger window.
We are dealing with a situation where the entire building's Washington Street front has already been transformed in the same way as they're proposing for the rest. So that's in character as far as I can see.
Right.
And the signage. I looked for the drop-down sign, and they're all along there. It's
But they're smaller.
several. They seem to be the same as the
Oh, okay.
size that they quoted for the new ones. And I think they also said the new drop-down signs would be the same type or size as the others along the other frontages, the other retails. So it's sort of like.
It is what it is. It just, to me, it looked like a cartoon, like the letters were like instead of something that's easier to read, actually. But
Well, yeah, like you said, a placeholder. It's just an indication of where a sign goes. So our concern would be on the overall dimension.
I don't know, I can't remember what the Gansevoort signs were, but we should probably dig that up a little bit and see what the requirements are, because we never know.
Right.
We're always guessing. And I think they started out a lot smaller and they've just gotten.
Maybe the thing to say is to approve, provided that they are the same size as
Yes.
the approved neighboring signs of the building.
Yeah, size
Yes.
and type.
Yes.
Please.
What'd you say?
Size and type.
Oh, good.
Font, you mean, like
No,
actual?
no.
Oh, the
Oh,
type
that's
as in the
one.
blade and, oh, got it.
Size,
Size
and something.
so difficult.
Brian said size and something, and I didn't get the second.
Typology.
The typology of sign. In other words, the others that are existing
As opposed to
Building.
typography.
are not, they're not lit up boxes or internally lit, or they're just, I think they're just
They're just
plain
painted.
painted or,
Yeah.
And typology doesn't have an ugly red line under it for a change.
All right, we're good, right? Yeah.
Okay.
East 10th Street. The principle is dead simple.
What a lot of
It was the best
excavation.
reassurance
Holy
about
moly.
excavation that we've ever had.
What'd you say, Chanel?
I felt it was the best reassurance about the care and the professional way that it's being done and the thoroughness of their work.
Pretty serious
What
work
is
they're
that?
doing here, pretty serious. They're basically floating their own building and building underneath it. And these are all rubble foundation walls, so. But it can be done. I mean, now we're pretty old hand at it.
yeah, they're giving up a lot of space in their sub-cellar to put in proper kind of foundation and having to support, underpin the NYU or the new school
yeah.
or whatever building, that larger building next to them. That's really.
Well, it's already got its own foundation. That's how gonna help them. They have a deep foundation now.
They seem to be underpinning the next door neighbor building.
But I do think we should reference the neighbors from 11th Street and try to put something in saying that, they testified, they shared their concerns,
And
and
I noted the three concerns.
you what?
I noted the three concerns in.
Yeah,
So
so
we
I think we should honor their testimony and include it in our resolution.
Because they're perfectly legitimate concerns. So.
Yes,
Yeah, I would
exactly.
say that I
And the
agree
ones
that
that we
these
haven't.
are legitimate concerns.
And the applicant said yes.
And just the honesty of saying, yes, there's a water problem and here's how we deal with it makes me confident of the
Right, as long as that's done, yeah.
integrity of the.
Well, it's all good for the community because information keeps everybody calmer. And rather than being surprised all the time.
Right.
So we're okay with this
We're agreed on
application.
that. And now to garbage.
Now to garbage.
Yep.
What I heard was that we recommend approval provided that it's split 2 and 2 symmetrically and not in front of the window.
Correct.
I had no idea the city was demanding those ugly bins.
Well, and they have to go through landmarks. That's like a whole thingamajig.
I actually, our Greg has left landmarks just
really,
now, and a new person is there. And I wrote to him to ask for guidance. Since this is the first time we've gotten these, and I haven't heard from him. So I think we'll just battle on. But they need to provide us something because this is a whole new world.
But this is a simple application. We're good with, as long as it's symmetrical and it's not in front of a window. I mean, trash is trash.
It's interesting. I guess I didn't realize it would go to DOT. I guess DSNY has nothing to do with it. It's DOT and LPC.
Yeah, I don't.
It's screwed into the sidewalk, so they very much have to do with it.
It's screwing into it.
Got it. Okay.
Revocable consent.
But it's
Right.
it's all instigated by sanitary.
Right.
Yeah, the new rules, the new.
Well, it's better than having it all out on the street. And
The church doesn't have that much. I mean, I don't know, unless they do a lot of meals.
well, they might.
we don't know.
We don't know. It's a wild place, maybe.
They can put some of their pretty flowers around it and cover it up.
Well, and it's better than, look, everybody has more and more trash, not less and less,
Right.
unfortunately. All right, we're good, right? So we're okay
That's
with
it.
that.
Now we move on.
Yeah. Last two.
The current state of the report is, Brian had some very good suggestions about just really making it cleaner and more nuanced.
Yeah.
And some detail, and where we trailed off with the name of something and all. So all those looked fine.
Did everybody read it? Does anybody have any comments? Any additions or changes or any?
Let me just pull it up.
One question I had, while others are looking at it and reviewing it, is that we did mention the commissioner for the Parks Department, Tricia Shimamura. I do have, at least in my notes, I hope that the spelling and the positions that they have, I have their names. There were the architect, the engineer from the department, and so I
have all
those were
in your notes.
I have not put them in because I didn't.
Send to me whatever you have and I'll add it. I just didn't get any of them.
I think Mark sent around the sign-in, which would have.
Did he send
those.
around the sign-in sheet? Okay.
I don't know who was on that email. I'm not sure.
I agree. And also we need to clean. Sorry, also we need to clean up how many outside who were those, how many of those people were outside consultants? How many of them were parks people? I think we need to research all of that.
Yeah, all of the people were part of the Parks Department.
Yeah.
I didn't have any notes about outside consultants.
And if we're still wobbly and need to ask them perhaps, we can simply have a note in it. This is a report, so it's only being submitted. So a note that they will be filled in will be perfect in order, because nobody's approving it.
Right.
I didn't.
I sent it to Rich, and I reworded about a dozen times saying that we were going to send it as a landmarks report and would like for him to comment on it. And we were sending it as with the assumption that Parks would send one next month because they don't meet until then. It's often how something grows out of a double meeting, particularly when there's at least an undercurrent that there's not total accord between the basic feeling of one committee and another.
I really think that it should be it was one meeting, it was one report. Here are the two attendants of the two different committees, and it should be consolidated into one report because it was one thing. I mean, that's my general feeling. I don't think there's anything that they really need to discuss to be in a report. It should just be a joint report. I think we do a disservice to the board if we separate them. And that was also the issue from the last time it was a joint effort, is that it didn't have like the land use committee attendance, but it was a joint report. And that caused there was a lot of, it was a prolonged discussion at full board because of that. Again, and it was.
My hand is up.
Susan Albert wants to speak.
And it was that was a resolution, so this is different, but it should be a joint report.
Can we then do the two and combine them?
Yeah.
Okay, Albert,
Then why don't we do
everybody, but I don't want to
let
lose
them do
Albert.
one, and then we'll take the two and have a what do you call a reconciliation committee to combine them, and that will.
I don't know what a committee.
And it may be since it's not a resolution, it may be a report that expresses some differences and says so, because that's what a report tells what is. I think that would work very well.
Okay, Albert, I just want to interrupt.
Yes, yes. You know, this is my baby, of course. Chenault, I think your report is splendid, but there is one thing that has occurred to me. It's very clear the city landmark designation is very clear. I think we could get a lot more money if it included the other two designations. If they hear downtown that the whole world is watching, I think that might have an effect. That's all. I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but I think they should be included.
And what I didn't hear what they were.
You didn't hear what?
I didn't hear what should be included. The names.
The other two designations.
What are they?
From the state and from the federal.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, we agree.
I understand.
Thank you, Albert. That's a great addition.
Okay.
And everybody should know that Albert is the reason we're here, because he bludgeoned them into including in the district.
That's right.
Oh.
That's right.
Light applause for Albert. Yay.
We're going to rename it Albert.
That's my baby.
Thank
Thank
so
you
we'll
all.
go forward with cleaning it up. We'll attempt to get all the people, and it might be cleaner to ask them to send it to us so that it's exactly right. And then add Albert's designations. Those are the two significant ones. And also, have written to Eric, who's the only person. Rich didn't have any ideas, and Eric, about identifying other particular interior spaces. I think I got all of the ones that are of beauty and historic that should be preserved, but I'm unclear about something called the weight room. So, well, if Eric comes with any others, I'll add them in.
Valerie.
One suggestion that came from the public testimony, I don't think I saw it in here, that was a really strong one, was about adding or creating a community advisory council that is similar, I think, to what has happened uptown with the casino or something like that. I think this was a part of Mara's testimony, but it was about how do we ensure that accountability and have a wide set of stakeholders from the community to kind of keep their eye on this process.
Community advisory
council.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Valerie.
Yeah, thanks.
And then we'll get testimony from them when we have no indication of when any next step is.
Listen, I know this is a use issue, not a landmarks issue, but I just would like to share that I was very curious about the Chelsea Recreation Center and went up there and had a little tour of the Chelsea Recreation Center. And I realized, there's greater density up there. So, that the scale might be greater there makes some sense. But what impressed me was the scope of their programming and how their programming really was not confined to athletic or sporty or health kind of, physical health, but that their programming also served other community needs like computer literacy. And, they had a lot going on there. It was a really vibrant, active place that had a lot of different kinds of programming that really spoke to young people, old people. I mean, it was just had a real diversity that was very impressive. And, we should have nice things too.
There was a wider scope. That upstairs room, the last floor is a penthouse. I was there once for a community board meeting, really eternities ago, and there were rooms with art, and I know there was an after-school program. I'll look around. Somewhere I saw that written down, so I'll look to see. I copied all the things off the web I could find.
God knows that space can be put to good use for our community.
It may one or two of those would do well for the appendix.
That was where
and the appendix, I think I will leave out so we can be sure that it's clean when it goes in, and I'll put a note that it will be added to include all the records and actions of the board.
That makes sense.
Chelsea Center is where all my children was filmed, rehearsed and filmed, and that was my last public appearance as an extra.
We're going to run out of money for plaques about you and community centers, Albert.
Well, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are we done?
Renaud, thank you.
No, we have one more item. We've got one more thing to discuss.
Well, I can report on a little of it. In good faith, I filled out the whole thing. And it said, if you want a copy, to click here. And I clicked, and it went away and no copy came, but I can tell you what I did. Has anybody else looked at it?
No.
Well, basically it asks what we know about the Public Arts Committee, and I sort of faked my way through that. And it said, what do you suggest? And I said that for a community board, what do you suggest? and I said that we suggested, this was my one to put in a hopper for us to discuss, that that there be applications along the line of those for the Landmarks Committee, and that the Landmarks Committee or its equivalent in other districts be the ones to deal with it. And either how that's dealt with would be decided. And I think it would be much like an application, that they would say what the proposal is for it, and then we would make comments and recommend. Oh, and then I didn't realize that it said clearly that the board should submit one, and I filled it out faithfully and clicked, and it turned out I'd submitted it, so I'm in bad disgrace with all around.
All right.
Does anybody know much about it?
I
believe that there was once a committee that dealt with that sort of thing. I know Robin was the chair, and I can't remember its name.
Arts and institutions and public art installation. I was on that for a while, and public art installations would come for review by that committee. But we don't really, what do we know about the Public Design Commission? And it looks like, but I think, I think
that they wanted to know if we were, I said a little bit.
Right. I think part of their interest was to determine what people knew or didn't know. And I think, not Valerie knows about it, but many of us do not know about it. Many people on the community board doubtless do not really know what the purview of the Public Design Commission is. And it sounds like they're, interested in communicating with community boards. So I just think, a presentation by them to the entire community board could be a good thing.
Or, yeah.
I'll send to Mark just the things that we include. So we know that the information to the available needs to be greater.
Yeah.
That we don't know much.
Yeah,
I know it has something to do with murals and whatnot, but I also know that most recently the PDC approved the design for the Hudson Houston Plaza. So the Hudson Houston Plaza at 388 Hudson, the open space.
Yeah. I walked through that last week.
Yeah, so that recently, they recently approved that.
Yeah, so their scope is more than public art, and that's why I think it would be nice to really know what.
And do they deal with temporary installations like Fat Ladies on the middle of Park Avenue?
I can't speak to that specifically, but I also recall back when Apollo, what's that really trendy bagel? Is it Apollo Bagel?
Yeah.
See the pizza place, and I remember knowing it was a friend, I didn't know the owner, but a friend of a friend knows the owner, and they were wanting to put a mural there the way they did in their other Lower East Side location, and it was about the public, it would go to the public design as well as this, because it's a historic district. Anyways, that never panned out, but I did a little digging on that. So that's my extent of knowledge of.
And I suppose that the herring mural was strictly the Parks Department doing it because it's on their property.
Right.
Yeah.
They came about, there was some to do, I can't remember what it was, but it displaced the Christmas tree from Washington Square Arch at Christmas time, and there was a great row.
Oh, it was the Ai Weiwei installation.
Is it agreed? I've forgotten exactly how the question was worded, but my answer was that it could come to the board along the lines of landmark applications. Is there a better way to word that?
How to word what?
Is there a better way to word that?
Can you say, or I'm sorry, I missed.
Oh, that they wanted to know how to come to something like, how should we present our proposal to a community board?
Oh, is it about the format of it or just like the logistics?
The logistics, I think.
I think they would just send it to Mark or to the office. Right?
Well, no, I think it was, the way I took it was more how it should, once it gets to the board, how does the board deal with it?
Oh, like what committee would go to?
Yeah, and I mean, it would have gone to the committee that Susan was on. If we had one, that would be just automatic for us. And they were saying what should happen, how should it be?
Well, I think the default would be here. I mean, the thing is that there's this very gray area of this working group of, it's now arts and culture, but it's a working group, but I don't think they meet, or is it it oddly exists, but it is not really doing anything, or
does it even still exist?
I don't know. I mean, it's still on the
okay, so we need to
Well,
find
a
out the
working group wouldn't be
status of this.
appropriate because it comes and goes for whatever reason. It needs
Right.
to be,
First it was a
needs to be
committee.
lodged somewhere. I think it's probably that most community boards are not organized as complexly as we are, and we just sort of have places for everything to fit automatically. I'll look at it again. If the general idea is it should come for review, which I
would think here. I would think
think so too, over anything else. And given that, I mean, if there were still an arts and institutions committee, that would be where it should go.
Right.
But given that that's not a committee and that it is
not meeting,
if it's anything at all, it's a working group.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really a reliable enough structure for something like
this is to be permanent. So.
Yeah.
And it is, in a sense, what we do.
Yeah.
I'll look at it again. I'll look at it again and then just send a narrative to Mark.
Public aesthetics. Yeah. Public aesthetics. We ain't just landmarks.
That's right. That's right.
Captures it.
I don't have any prospective.
Apologies.
We may not get the great work of art proposed next month, and I will definitely get guidance. It's was it distributed a application concerning a painting on a wall, a work of art? It was described on a wall, the way we have wall signs, and it is it basically covers the whole wall and doesn't respect any borders or anything. And I will, now that he's a little more settled, like to be sure about how they handle something that is described as a work of art rather than a sign painted on the wall.
Are you talking about the exploitation of Jean-Michel Basquiat?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't know what's going to happen with that, but we'll have to really review that very carefully.
I believe it's coming next month. It was one that, again, they hadn't been to the staff, and staff needs to review it first. So
yeah.
Okay. I will have gotten guidance from the commission before it happens in any case.
Great.
Thank you all, and thank you for your extra meeting and very complicated one at that.
All right.
Good
Thanks.
leadership. Thank you, Chanel.
Good night. Thanks, Chanel. Happy Valentine's Day to all.
Oh, we should have
One night we
changed.
had a
And
community
thank you
board
to Dina for hanging in. All right.
I don't have the name of the engineer.
Yeah, it was